This week's episode was brought to you by Abe Finch. Thank you, Abe Finch. It's with the generous support of listeners like you that we at The Whole Rabbit get to keep making bizarre, esoteric content every week. If you also would like to become a celebrated supporter, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 gets you all our extended shows, a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our cover art, the green bunny with the big bazumas, and access to our Discord server, where your freaky Aunt Sally hangs out. In the 1800s, the mechanized digital world we live in today was born. Now, we live in the adolescent times of a global consciousness, which, at the turn of the century, was a toddler taking its first steps. And like all children that grow up too fast, so did we, discovering the secrets of biology, rocketry, and nuclear fission before we had a chance to even know what that meant. We are, in many ways, children with the power of the gods. Through the black mirrors we carry with us every day, we have the capacity to do everything from make a living to destroy somebody's life, even our own. So what happens when the dust clears, the cute hats, and the supercilious accusers pass away? What remains? Is the religion of Thelema forever doomed to obscurity, owing itself to a long list of tragically ambitious tryhards with dubious personal lives and a tendency to detonate themselves spectacularly in view of the general public, which turns away feeling horrified with a bad taste in their mouths? Probably. But in the spirit of being an ambitious tryhard with a dubious personal life and a tendency to detonate myself spectacularly in view of the public, I present to you, with full hyperbolic gusto, what the fuck is Thelema Part 2?
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Thelema without the cute hats. This one particular episode will be available for free at www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit in its full extended form as a sample of what you would get normally at our $5 tier. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
I read once somewhere that there's that mutual hatred sometimes brings people closer than mutual love, because that mutual hatred is based in such a deep mutual love. So you have both of the polar opposites combined. So sometimes people bond over mutual hatred.
That's actually how Twitter works. I mean, how do you really know if somebody is your friend unless you bully people together?
But I just stay off of Twitter. It's so negative.
I mean, that's really like what we can say the success of this online culture is. It's all based off of pretty much bagging on each other for so long.
There's just three of us here. Does that make you Rahor Queet, Malachor?
That's cool.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just fall in love with the adorably kitsch minutia, the company of symbols and thick books which alluringly attend them, so that we can sell ourselves to social media, offering them as a font of our highly polished identity, become inextricably linked to them through the viral proliferation of our personality complex and abeyance to the fickle algorithmic archons which preside over our destiny and feed us bit by juicy bit to the ravenous social climbers and bullies who just 10 seconds ago counted themselves amongst our best friends. Nay, we find ourselves buried like tiny mumble rappers in the bosom of the goddess herself, the very one who speaks so clearly as thunder, perfect mind, and the Daughter of Fortitude, offering herself willingly to anyone with enough courage to walk with her back home to Africa, where she got her one-bedroom apartment in ancient Egypt that Aleister Crowley and his wife Rose Edith Kelly cut their first major LP from, and enjoy her immortal lips, which are sweeter than health itself, because this week we're discussing Thelema, but without the cute hats. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, the Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week by hosts, the monstrously manly mummy of miraculously musical mischief, Malachor 5.
Hello.
And the harbinger of Hathor's hot hermetic heat, Heka Astra.
Hello. That was a hot intro. Hathor has a pretty nice hat, though. I like her hat.
So we're probably going to be talking about some controversial aspects of Thelema today. I don't think all Thelemites will readily agree with some of the things we're going to be speculating on. A lot of our sources come from, well, Egyptian mythological history, but also Oliver St. John, who runs a lodge called Ordo Astri, and whose current could be best defined as esoteric Thelema. And this challenges some of the baked-in mores that the rest of Thelema seems to be so hung up on. So gather up your magical weapons and come with us on a journey through what the fuck is Thelema Part 2, basically. So in a world that is rapidly beginning to dissolve its old, monolithic, patriarchal, and oppressive mental, spiritual, and political structures, where does the esoteric religion of Thelema, one so infamously associated with the problematic and ever-maligned Aleister Crowley, fit in? Might we say that Thelema is just another hip marketing twist using the, quote, Egyptoid gods as a facelift for the same old religious colonizers who demand piety at the end of a sword, destroy indigenous culture, commodify women and children, and monetize every atom of Mother Earth until nothing is left for them to buy along with their business partners? Or is Thelema something entirely different altogether? By the end of the free section of this show, we hope to clarify some of these points and explain why Thelema is still a living esoteric current that transcends Aleister Crowley, cute hats, and modern misunderstandings to connect humanity back to a wellspring of wisdom flowing to us from ancient Egypt, which apocalyptically aims to supplant colonial, patriarchal, and monolithic ideologies at their very root through the expressed intention of ending the era in which they reign and ushering in a new one of science, progress, rich diversity, and most importantly, liberty. But what about Aleister Crowley?
He was definitely questionable to me, especially some of the accounts of the stuff that happened at the Abbey of Thelema. And it eventually got him kicked out of Italy.
I think some lady died of drinking cat blood.
I think, yeah, you said that in the part one to this. So, yeah, go to that episode to hear about some more of those accounts.
They were living like the crack fox in Mighty Boosh.
I think he did a whole lot of what he wanted to and not what he willed.
Do wilt be law.
But I think he knew this or something. He was like touching on some very interesting points, I guess, in the esoteric mind. And that's why we still talk about him.
Well, he's still a very important occult figure.
Honestly, I think some of the reason he was seen as so evil back then is because he was too woke for his time. And a lot of the reason he's evil now is because he's way not woke enough. He's not modern enough. Like, he's some colonial autocrat, douchebag, fuck boy. Like, let's be real, man. He could really write sometimes, though, even if it was confusing. So, to be fair, progenitor Aleister Crowley, if not entirely unpalatable, is often equally as impenetrable, veiling Thelema's mysteries behind endless layers of obscure symbolism and insider jokes. After all, if you can explain to your friends why you're reading Aleister Crowley, you still probably stand no chance of explaining to poor old grandma why you're worshiping the bad guy, or literally bad girl, of biblical revelations. Bible time.
Bible time.
So in Revelation 14, it says, "And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven, tweeting, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities."
Yeah, that's actually not Revelations. That also is from Twitter.
They're on their biblical tablets, just like texting away.
All you people who followed the wrath of her fornications.
And he's pretty much cursing the earth, it sounds like.
Well, St. John of Patmos was a very frustrated person, and we'll get to why this verse is important later. So Crowley's obsession with the archetypal characters of biblical revelations would come to color the character of his life's work, and often serves as the first stumbling block for people interested in Thelema. As you may know, Crowley became obsessed with the beast of Revelations after his Plymouth Brethren cultist mother was apt to call him exactly that when he was misbehaving. As prophetic as it may have been, it probably would have been an obscure footnote in Crowley's history had this cast of characters gone unmentioned in the reception of Thelema's holy book, the Book of the Law, Liber Al Legis, which erroneously is believed to have been transmitted to Crowley rather than more accurately his wife, Rose Edith Kelly, who went by the magic name Orda the Seer.
Gonna get hot in here. Turning up the heat.
Of this, Oliver St. John writes, Rose was by all accounts the medium and intelligence for the transmission activated through the Stele of Revealing in Cairo's museum in 1904. We know that Crowley needed her help when he wished to change some of the wording after the transmission, even though he later claimed she had not even been present in the room when the book was received. Babalon appears in two aspects in the Book of the Law. Firstly, in cosmic form as Nuit, and secondly, as the Scarlet Woman, or soul, who may fall or undergo resurrection. If Oliver is right about this, it looks really bad for Crowley on two counts. First, Aleister Crowley stole the credit from his wife, Rose Edith Kelly, for receiving the Book of the Law. Secondly, it means that Crowley, despite being warned by Nuit otherwise, went on to change wording received for the Book of the Law, writing in his notes under the original, "Write this in whiter words." The line he wished to change was Nuit, the goddess, speaking on the nature of her body, in Book 1, line 26.
And the sign shall be my ecstasy, the consciousness of the continuity of existence, the unfragmentary, non-atomic fact of my universality.
The second part might seem like a small point, but as Oliver St. John explains, it's fundamentally trifled with the intent behind the goddess's meaning. Crowley received permission, presumably, to change the last 5 words to the omnipresence of my body. A rather trite theological intervention compared to the vitality of the original phrase, although superficially, the meaning is the same. The neologism unfragmentary, used in conjunction with non-atomic, specifically declares the geometry of spacetime as non-Euclidean, and the atomic world as a mere conventional illusion.
Bum, bum, bum.
So he automatically tried to whitewash Nuit, like from the beginning.
Yeah.
Sadly,
That's wrong.
I mean, she told him not to. And then he just yelled at Rose until she told him he could or something.
Oh, man. What a ass.
I could imagine Crowley being really fucking annoying and pestering until he got his way.
Yeah, he didn't have to yell. He had all of English literature on his side.
He'd just be condescending as fuck.
Yeah. Sadly, as we will discover, this is par and course for a pattern of abuse against the goddess, which often sees her uncannily clear message subverted, censored, or destroyed in lieu of what Terence McKenna would call patriarchal ego dominator culture. Well, arguably, progressive for his time, Aleister Crowley would fall squarely into this ego dominator description today, especially considering his attitude towards women and relegating them to a passive role in many of Thelema's sexual rites. How the Egyptian Book of the Law came into existence in the first place is important to understanding some of the fundamental points of the Thelemic religion. So, how did Crowley end up, quote, receive the Book of the Law? How did that happen? Well, by the turn of the century, Crowley had learned everything the Golden Dawn was capable of teaching him, and had famously acquired a property known as the Bullskine House, located in Loch Ness, Scotland, for one expressed purpose: to perform the rites of Abramelin the Mage and make contact with his holy guardian angel. Please refer to our series on Aleister Crowley to hear more. To summarize some of the more important points, though, Crowley met Rose Edith Kelly shortly after one of many aborted attempts at beginning the Abramelin ritual in the Bullskine House. Crowley had moved his bed into the temple space and spent the better part of a month in meditative introspection in preparation for the rest of the work. Then, typical of Crowley during this phase of a working, he cracked and went into town to restock on wine and hired an attractive red-headed woman to move in as his maidservant and mistress. While he was waiting for his maidservant, Mistress Thing, to move in, he got a call from an old friend who was in town getting his mom a medical procedure. Among his family was his sister, Rose Edith Kelly, who had come along with her fiancé in tow. Rose was shy and uneducated in history, mythology, and poetry, but she was able to quote a line from Yeats, which Crowley found sufficient enough to flirt with her over. In that encounter, she would confide in Crowley that she had spent the last few years married away to some lord in South Africa who had died just 2 years ago. Since then, she had been sleeping with a few men and had maybe just a little bit got engaged to 2 separate men and really didn't want to deal with it anymore. Crowley suggested that the two get married to solve this dilemma, only to fall in love with her during the charade. Naturally, her brother, Crowley's friend, was pissed off and slow to cool off about it. Eventually,
Yeah. I'd be pissed. I would be pissed too. I'd be like, really? Really?
Well, that's the thing, is this guy was okay with Crowley's problematic views towards women until he was suddenly his brother-in-law. Then it wasn't okay anymore. Eventually, Crowley felt it necessary to give Rose a real honeymoon and set off to a trip to Naples, Cairo for a short visit, Ceylon to meet Alan Bennett, and finally to China. As Richard Kaczynski in Perturabo explains, in Cairo, as elsewhere, Crowley went to great trouble to impress his beloved, whom he now embraced with characteristic passion. A night in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza struck him as romantic, so he arranged it. They marched to the pyramid and had dinner. Then Crowley dismissed the servants and took the dinner candles with them down into the chamber. Surrounded by mysteries as old as civilization itself, Crowley demonstrated for Rose his magical skills. He took out the Goetia and crouched over the dim candlelight, straining to make out the words, recited the primary invocation of the Goetia, only to realize halfway through he no longer needed to crouch and squint near the candle, as the chamber had filled with a strange astral glow. Then Crowley burned out the candle and made the sex inside the king's chamber with his wife, Rose Edith Kelly. Sometime later, Rose began explaining that she thought she might very well be preggers. Crowley decided they would spend some time in Sri Lanka hunting big game before returning to Europe and taking care of having a successful pregnancy. After all, he wasn't quite sure if she was really pregnant yet, and he wasn't really ready to stop vacationing.
Yeah, he really took care of her by continuously leaving her while she was pregnant.
In the
This
jungle.
is what frat boys do. This is what frat boys do.
Look, he said he wanted to hunt big game. So he set up camp in south jungles of Ceylon in a small bungalow beside a river. And he spent most of the day hunting, lions, tigers, bears, wombats, whatever else you do when you hunt. Near the end of the day, something curious caught his eye. Crowley there spied a copious amount of giant furry fox bats hanging below the tree line along the riverbank. He immediately knew that these would make the perfect waistcoat or maybe a fancy hat for Rose. He went back to the bungalow and convinced Rose to accompany him. The two quietly approached the bats in their riverboat, paddling quietly right under the trees where they slept. Hastily, Crowley let out a few shots that darkened the sky with giant, panicked flying mammals. One of the bats, frantic and wounded, managed to land straight in Rose's hair, flapping wildly and scaring her half to death. It took some time before the pair could get the bat untangled from her hair. Why is this important? It's part of Rose's story, and the next bit, I think, is more important than some occult historians have made it out to be, and I'll explain why. Later that night, Crowley records in his journal, bearing witness to what he calls the most profound case of obsession he had ever seen. Apparently, Rose had become unshakably possessed and displaying the same body movements and gestures of the fox bat that they had encountered earlier. She was attempting to bite and crawl through the mosquito netting and generally just frightening Crowley. Apparently, it took some time to get Rose to snap back to being Rose and go back to sleep. Like, this is a dude who would just get high on experimental drugs and conjure demons in his apartment without banishing them. He'd seen some things. Apparently, this was like next level for him. He was like, this is above my pay grade, whatever is possessing Rose, essentially. In my opinion, this is all important to the reception of the Book of the Law. We discovered while researching for our Samhain/Halloween episode that there are many colorful mythologies concerning spirits, ancestors, and the underworld in Celtic culture, something that Crowley was absolutely obsessed with at the time. One particularly relevant superstition was that if a woman were to ever lose a hair to a bat being tangled in it, she would invariably lose her soul.
I know, bats, they're obviously nocturnal animals, so I'm sure there's a lot of cultures that have them linked to the underworld. I think there's even bats in Egypt, to be honest. I think they do have fruit bats, giant fruit bats.
They often have spooky or negative connotations in culture, but I thought it was interesting that Celtic mythology specifically had this one thing where if your waifu loses a hair to a bat that gets stuck in it, she's going to lose her soul. What does that mean? She loses the agency of her body, of herself,
You kind of become an open vessel.
Right, and she was pregnant. They had the sex in the king's chamber.
Oh, man. So she was possessed while pregnant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They named the baby Lilith, right? She didn't live very long.
That's fucked up.
It took Crowley down a peg when it happened. He was very upset about it. Anyway, this hadn't happened yet. This bat incident, I think, was the cherry on top of a string of strange conditions, which led Rose to being in the exact perfect state of mind to receive the Book of the Law in Cairo, just a short while later. So without rehashing our old episode, they get to Cairo. Crowley invokes sliffs because he wants to impress Rose. These are the spirits of the air. He's learned to do this through his Golden Dawn curriculum. Rose goes into a trance and starts saying, "They're waiting for you." Crowley's like, "Cut it out, Rose. I'm trying to impress you with my spirit stuff." And she continues to be possessed. So he starts to quiz her and the spirit that's possessing her. The spirit seems to have very accurate information and claims to be Horus, being able to cite all his attributions and all the stuff that really impresses Crowley, stuff that he knows Rose doesn't know. To prove it, the entity possessing Rose leads Crowley into the Cairo Archaeological Museum, past various prominent displays, right up to item number 666, which shows a birth stela of Ankh Fnakansu, a priest dedicated to Montu, worshipping Ra Horus, underneath a solar disk with Nuit bent over it. Rose, in her channeled state, then gives Crowley a ritual to perform that seems unfamiliar to him, which, once he completed properly, saw the appearance of Aihuas, a messenger of Horus, to help him write the Book of the Law, 1 chapter per day, for an hour each day for the next 3 days. From what we can tell, it seems like Rose was the one who did the channeling, and Crowley just didn't give her credit. Aihuas is usually claimed as the writer of the text and is often referred to as Crowley's holy guardian angel. Ankh Fnakansu was a priest who became one with his deity through esoteric practice and lives eternally as him in aspect. We might consider the Book of the Law a transmission from Ankh Fnakansu in his self-slain unity with Montu, an aspect of Ra Horus. While Ra Horus represents the entire concept of Ra and Horus in unity, Montu is the most important aspect for this particular priest at this particular cult center. This is why Montu and Ra Horus can speak as each other. It is also understood that important cult centers that worship deities often took on multiple qualities and aspects of different gods. So Heka and I talked a little bit about this last night. Mentu is a little bit like your boss at their company. Ra Horus, or Ra Horquit, is your boss as an entire person, both inside and outside of work. Now in Egypt, so we talked a bit about this last night because it's confusing.
Well, because it can get really confusing for people, So we tried to hash out how to make it as simple as possible to understand this concept.
So the idea of Ra Horus, or in Thelema, Ra Horquit, is the bigger, more encompassing, important principle, but Ankh Fnakansu was dedicated to Montu, which is an aspect of Ra, and Montu is essentially the sun at full strength, the direct heat of the day, and was also sometimes associated with Set, which is important because this cult center in Thebes, it wasn't known as Thebes to the ancient Egyptians, it was known as Waset, and here you have Ra Horus holding a Was scepter, so there's a strong association with Set as well as both Ra and Horus in this deity.
This is I would say the crowned and conquering king, the union, the absolute union between Ra and Horus, which of course has that control and power over the Set aspect, which that inevitably includes the Set aspect of Ra, which is Montu.
For our Star Wars fans out there, I believe this is what Rey symbolizes, more or less. The good and the bad of this energy.
Like that scene when she's like running and she does this like crazy in the air backflip. I think you see it in slow motion, and her lightsaber goes right through the wing of Kylo Ren's ship.
Because he's an Apis bull that's ramming her?
Yeah, but it happens right at the peak of her arc as she's jumping over, and that's like the Set aspect, that war energy of Montu at the height of noon. And
right after that, she demonstrates that she has lightning powers, which is also the domain of Set.
Yeah.
And
that's the dark side power.
Yeah, and in the World War II mythology association with Star Wars, it also represents the evil side. Yeah, because that's what the evil side of that war associated themselves with, the power of the storm.
We have to do a Star Wars episode sometime.
Not as shallow as some people think, that's for sure.
Oh, there's a lot.
So if we haven't scared you away with that yet, I don't think Thelema has, quote, Egyptoid gods. And if it insists on having them, it's because white people feel the need to ooga boogafy Egypt and don't agree with worshiping their gods sincerely, choosing to appropriate them as red-haired vampire porno god sluts on Angel Fire websites cluttered with gematria and bullshit.
Yeah, when I hear the term Egyptoid, it just really bothers me to my core.
Yeah, this is where this is the hill we're dying on. That's different than other, you know what I mean? Like,
cannot stand for that. I'm calling bullshit. I'm bringing the heat because that's fucking bullshit.
That is the problematic part of Thelema, in my opinion, is this need to like whitewash and pornoify these Egyptian deities, like...
So in the epilogue of the Book of the Law, Crowley states that the study of this book is forbidden, and then he elaborates saying that anyone who discusses content of this book are to be shunned by all as, quote, centers of pestilence, and that, quote, all questions of the law are to be decided only by appeal to my writing, each for himself, blah, blah, blah. I think this epilogue is a ridiculous commentary made by Crowley, and it only serves to push people away from gaining a deeper understanding for themselves by being able to converse with others. And I think it's really reminiscent of the traditions of secret knowledge, but with a really big dose of because, which in and of itself appears to disregard part of the transmission. Quote, there is great danger in me, for who doth not understand these runes shall make a great myth. He shall fall down into the pit called because, and there he shall perish with the dogs of reason. Now a curse upon because and his kin. May because be accursed forever. If will stops and cries why, invoking because, then will stops and does not. If power asks why, then power is weakness. Also reason is a lie, for there is a factor infinite and unknown, and all their words are skew-wise. Enough of because. Be he damned for a dog. Be ye, O my people, rise up and awake. So it seems pretty obvious to me that Crowley added this epilogue stating not to discuss it because it could influence the individual's interpretation of the divine, even if that could be beneficial for the individuals. And granted, there should be greater significance given to the direct experience of the divine rather than to the discussion of it. But by refraining from discussing the book altogether, you inherently inhibit the ability for people to bring their experiences into a deeper understanding of what it means. I think his restrictions really serve to do more harm than good, especially for a belief system that becomes very personal for the practitioner and doesn't necessarily comply with restrictions based on the faculty of true will. The word of sin is restriction, oh man. The way that I see it, the true pestilence is the perpetuated perversion and lack of understanding that is only further prolonged by such an ignorant statement on Crowley's behalf. And that's my take on it. I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with me on this. That's totally fine. But I'm not personally a Crowley worshipping fangirl wanting to suck the so-called beast Phallus for occult popularity points. So I'm pretty happy to point out that Crowley himself is problematic when he says only by appeal to my writings. What a pretentious bastard. He's assumed that all commentary on the matter aside from his is a center of pestilence, and that implies that no one knows better than him. And I obviously can acknowledge his intellect and his role as an important occult figure. I just simply don't agree with him absolutely, and nor do I care to glorify the man. I think he's just as guilty as the Greeks for the way in which he wielded this information.
I mean, my interpretation of it is that it's very much like the Tao Te Ching, and that there's no words. Like, a lot of this stuff is just beyond anything but what is the book, kind of.
Yeah, but there's nothing that says don't talk about the Tao Te Ching. Don't discuss this.
Well, so it says you can't. You can't discuss the Tao is what it says. Not that you shouldn't, but you can't.
You have to gain an understanding of it for yourself. That's what I'm trying to say about, like, obviously it's a very personal experience, but, like, it's still okay to talk.
A lot of my friends who are, Thelemites, they read it every year. We're not afraid to recite words from it. I agree that it's kind of weird for him to put it in there, and maybe, like, it is to keep it a secret and stuff like that, because I do think that there's a reason for that too. But
well, you also have to think
it's
of,
weird
like,
to
the
just
time.
have the comment. It's weird to put the comment there.
You kind of have to think of the time, though, like the time when it was written and his experiences. A lot of that stuff was like mystery schools, secret knowledge. Like, you don't share this with people. You don't, like, give out this information. I think that had an influence for sure. But if you don't change the old ways, you're never going to move forward.
In chapter 2, verse 22 in Book of the Law, it says, "It is a lie, this folly against self. The exposure of innocence is a lie." So, as a Thelemite, you're not going to lose points with the deity for exposing yourself to something, especially reading something or studying something. Doesn't mean it's not dangerous, but there's no moral wrongness with studying it. It's still, you have to guard and protect your mind, which is the first part of Book 3, but there's nothing ontologically, morally, ethically wrong with exposing yourself to information, or even ingesting and celebrating certain things, which is what it says right before that. but it extends to other things as well.
I think if it feels right to discuss it with someone, then do it.
It really, the most extreme example I can think of this would be people in the FBI who are hunting down human traffickers and they have to look at really horrible evidence. Those people are not losing points karmically for looking at horrible things, trying to hunt down the bad guys. That's kind of what it means. It means like Russ Cole does have a responsibility to watch the whole video in True Detective. You know what I mean? He's being a good Thelemite in that scene. The truth is, even with Thelema, it's understood that the Book of the Law is not the only transmission of the Babylon current, and two profound examples exist, one from medieval times and the other from biblical. Thunder, Perfect Mind, is believed to have been buried with a Pachamanian monk in the North Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi. Some scholars believe he was buried with the manuscripts due to Saint Athanasius banning the study of non-canonical gospels in his 367 Festal letter, but nobody's 100% certain. In fact, the identity of the native who found the Nag Hammadi manuscripts was a complete mystery for many years. Some sources suggest the gravesite was actually within the Jabal al-Tarif Mountains just outside of Nag Hammadi, whose rich honeycomb of more than 150 caves had been carved, painted, and used as grave sites as early as the 6th dynasty. Some speculate the circumstances of the discovery were obscure because it actually occurred during a grave robbery. But more than 30 years later, Muhammad Ali al-Saman came forward to explain what really happened, and multiple sources still attest to this story being the authentic one. According to Muhammad Ali Saman, his brother and he were out gathering sabah, a soft soil to fertilize their crops. Digging around a large boulder, Muhammad discovered a red earthenware jar almost a meter high. At first, Muhammad was afraid to break the jar, fearing that it might release a powerful jinn. This seems silly until you learn about jinn. But because Muhammad Ali's family was desperately poor, he decided it was worth the risk just to see if the pot was full of gold. Famously, the brothers, seeing that their discovery was none but papyrus scrolls wrapped in leather, dumped it on the floor next to the stove into a pile of dry straw where their mom, Ahmad, admittedly used it for kindling, burning a number of the pages in the following weeks. In those weeks, she was also blessed with news that Ahmad Ismail, the one who had murdered her husband, was in town, and that her sons should sharpen their mattocks in case they happen upon him. As it would turn out, Muhammad and his brother did happen upon Ahmed and hacked him into tiny pieces, consuming his freshly beating heart as a symbolic victory of avenging their father's death. That's when Muhammad got worried that if the police searched the house, they might find evidence that he'd been in the area, and the strange books he had discovered, well, those might incriminate him, so he handed them over to a local priest. Eventually, these codices were sold on the black market, and even one landed in Carl Jung's hands before the various disparate parts eventually made their way back to Cairo, Egypt, where they reside today.
What a crazy story.
What makes the discovery in 1946 so important to the religion of Thelema is that it contains a transmission from the same exact spiritual deity that Jack Parsons and L. Rod Hubbard were famously attempting to bring into manifestation through months of strenuous occult ritual at precisely the same time as its discovery, namely the Scarlet Woman, Babylon, who in the Nag Hammadi text is identified as Thunder, Perfect Mind. The first part of Thunder Perfect Mind goes as follows.
I was sent forth from the power, and I have come to those who reflect upon me, and I have been found among those who seek after me. Look upon me, you who reflect upon me, and you hearers, hear me. For who are waiting for me, take me to yourselves, and do not banish me from your sight, and do not make your voice hate me, nor your hearing. Do not be ignorant of me, anywhere or any time. Be on your guard. Do not be ignorant of me. For I am the first and the last. I am the honored one and the scorned one. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother and the daughter. I am the members of my mother. I am the barren one, and many are her sons. I am she whose wedding is great, and I have not taken a husband. I am the midwife, and she who does not bear. I am the solace of my labor pain. I am the bride and the bridegroom, and it is my husband who begot me. I am the mother of my father and the sister of my husband, and he is my offspring. I am the slave of him who prepared me. I am the ruler of my offspring, but he is the one who begot me before the time on a birthday, and he is my offspring in due time, and my power is from him. I am the staff of his power in his youth, and he is the rod of my old age. And whatever he wills happens to me. I am the silence that is incomprehensible, and the idea whose remembrance is frequent. I am the voice whose sound is manifold, and the word whose appearance is multiple. I am the utterance of my name. Why, you who hate me, do you love me? And hate those who love me? And you who deny me, confess me. And you who confess me, deny me. And you who tell the truth about me, lie about me. And you who have lied about me, tell the truth about me. You who know me, be ignorant of me. And those who have not known me, let them know me. For I am knowledge and ignorance. I am shame and boldness. I am shameless. I am ashamed. I am strength and I am fear. I am war and peace. Give heed to me. I am the one who is disgraced and the great one. Give heed to my poverty and my wealth. Do not be arrogant to me when I am cast out upon the earth, and you will find me in those that are to come. And do not look upon me on the dung heap, nor go and cast me out, and you will find me in the kingdom. And do not look upon me when I am cast out among those who are disgraced and in the least places, nor laugh at me. And do not cast me out among those who are slain in violence, but I am compassionate, and I am cruel. Be on your guard. Do not hate my obedience, and do not love my self-control. In my weakness, do not forsake me, and do not be afraid of my power. For why do you despise my fear, and curse my pride? But I am she who exists in all fears, and strength in trembling. I am she who is weak, and I am well in pleasant place. I am senseless, and I am wise. Why have you hated me in your counsels? For I shall be silent among those who are silent, and I shall appear and speak. Why then have you hated me, you Greeks? Because I am a barbarian among the barbarians? For I am the wisdom of the Greeks and the knowledge of the barbarian. I am the judgment of the Greeks and of the barbarians. I am the one whose image is great in Egypt, and the one who has no image among the barbarians. I am the one who has been hated everywhere, and who has been loved everywhere. I am the one whom they call life, and you have called death. I am the one whom they call law, and you have called lawlessness. I am the one whom you have pursued, and I am the one whom you have seized. I am the one whom you have scattered, and you have gathered me together. I am the one before whom you have been ashamed, and you have been shameless to me. I am she who does not keep festival, and I am she whose festivals are many. I am godless, and I am the one whose God is great. I am the one whom you have reflected upon, and you have scorned me. I am unlearned, and they learn from me. I am the one that you have despised, and you reflect on me. I am the one whom you have hidden from, and you appear to me. But whenever you hide yourself, I myself will appear. For whenever you appear, I myself will hide from you.
Well, her words are shocking enough by themselves. In Thelemic context, the fact these words were discovered during Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard's famous Babalon Working is mind-blowing. To understand why, however, the devil is in the details. Judging by the hyperbolic language of occultists, one might be surprised to find that Crowley's occult organization, the fabled Ordo Templi Orientis, was not exactly the world-dominating, prolific Illuminati cult that one is first tempted to imagine. Prior to the Agape Lodge in Pasadena, California, headed by upstart rocket scientist Jack Whiteside Parsons, Thelema and its occult organization, the OTO, had grown to only a modest size, with Crowley becoming more and more dependent on its leaders for donations to survive, having spent most of his inheritance during his younger days. Under Jack Parsons, though, Thelema, for maybe the first time ever, was sexy, new, and exciting. The Agape Lodge, which was Jack Parsons' mansion, essentially, saw many bohemians and intellectuals grace its various parties, occult meetings, and drug-fueled soirees. As time went on, Crowley became more dependent on that rocket money, and Jack Parsons became elevated to being the de facto heir of the OTO organization, and even a son figure to the master Therion himself, Aleister Crowley. If you'd really like to know all the details, we have an entire series on Jack Parsons as well, but for the sake of the story, it's important to know that Jack, besides attracting a lot of young money and new recruits to Thelema, was also known to be a bit naive and excitable in a world otherwise governed by austere and supercilious personalities. Even during his early days at Caltech, his immediate superiors at first struggled to get Jack to write down, tabulate, and record his research as meticulously as serious science demands. According to his immediate occult superiors, the same criticism was made of his esoteric endeavors as well. The people that knew Jack best would be quick to tell you some of his harebrained behavior likely corresponded with his prolific drug use that combined with his occult genius in unpredictable ways. Despite these shortcomings, it seemed that Jack's professional and occult superiors were willing to work alongside him in a leadership capacity because he was so deeply dedicated and hopelessly in love with both pursuits, which to him were one and the same. Things would eventually, however, fall a little too far off script when Jack unwittingly befriended the cantankerous, charismatic buffoon that was a young L. Ron Hubbard. Although it is beyond the scope of this particular episode, it seems likely that L. Ron Hubbard, future creator of Scientology, rather than being unceremoniously discharged from his service in the Navy for being a bold-faced manipulator with the capacity to perfectly obscure his own ineptitude, was likely recruited into intelligence and sent to infiltrate the Pasadena OTO Lodge to see if this bizarre Jack Parsons and his daddy Aleister Crowley were a bunch of no good goddamn communists or whatever. But eventually, he too went off script, took what he learned from them, weaponized it, and eventually founded Scientology to cash in. This is why Scientology has more money than a small country, and why like the OTO is like your uncle and his few friends.
But the cool uncle.
Your cool uncle with the really sparkly sparkle in his eye.
That's kind of how I think of Lon Milo Duquette. He's like the cool uncle that I always wanted.
Mamo Duquette's like our equivalent of a Buddha.
I really hate it when I guess people who are not identified as Thelemites for a long list of reasons, and they're like, yeah, it's because of that shit. Jack Parsons was a fucking Scientologist, you idiot, and like all this other stuff. And I'm just like, you guys are fucking stupid. Like, no, this isn't Scientology at all. Like, I hate hearing that, because that is a bad cult. For sure.
It's like how we were discussing earlier. You can't really get a good view of Thelema or what it really means without going back and looking at some of this history that predates Thelema itself and basically is the basis for their curriculum. Now, I thought it was really interesting that the Nag Hammadi was found, all this was going on exactly when L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons were doing like months of crazy sex magic. And they didn't even know about this. Like the Nag Hammadi wasn't even fully translated into English and made public for everyone until Star Wars in 1977.
Are you talking about the working that they did that basically summoned that woman to them?
Yeah, Marjorie Cameron. They were doing workings to manifest Babylon to manifestation, and then some smoking hot redhead shows up, knocks on the door, and's like, "I'm here to fuck," and they're like, "Wow, this magic that Crowley gave us kind of works." And they didn't even know about the Nag Hammadi.
It was based off of a book called Moonchild or something that Crowley wrote, and they were trying to like birth a moon baby. I think that's technically the term for it.
Yeah, like they're trying to make a magical child that would help immanentize the Eschaton. I mean, like bring about the Aeon of Horus quicker and the end of the Aeon of Osiris quicker.
Having a lot of sex about it.
Well, you know, this is the thing is they had a falling out shortly afterwards. Like L. Ron Hubbard ends up stealing his wife and his boat and his money. It's a real problem. And then he goes and founds Scientology after this. Now, besides befriending an obvious huckster like L. Ron, Aleister Crowley was growing weary of Jack Parsons' attempt to fill his shoes too early and drive Thelema to be a more divine feminine and Babylon-centered counterbalance to the Aeonic forces of Horus that Crowley had expounded in the Book of the Law, going so far as to eventually attempt writing a fourth Book of the Law with Babylon as its author. This, along with the Babalon Working performed with LRH that preceded it, were on Crowley's list of foolish bullshit that he was rapidly running out of patience for. Yet, despite his off-the-cuff, shoot-from-the-hip style, Jack Parsons, as usual, was on to something. Prior to Parsons and Hubbard, there existed another pair of magicians from the medieval court of Queen Elizabeth named John Dee and Edward Kelly. John Dee had long been Queen Elizabeth's court astrologer, having famously decided the date of her coronation and was ever faithful in serving the Queen. In fact, John Dee founded MI5 and, in secret communications with Her Majesty, signed his name 007, which modern people can appreciate as an early text emoji of a person holding their hands above their eyes in a lookout gesture.
Yeah, I've heard some scholars who like read the all these old notes between the Queen and such that that symbol probably was a pair of glasses, the old Victorian glasses that have a handle on the side, and was code for the Queen's eyes only.
Is this like you mean like opera glasses that magnify?
Yeah,
so you can see things
but not long
from
range,
far away?
just up close.
Yeah, for reading.
Oh yeah, because opera glasses are used like.
But yeah, those would have the handle on the side too. I couldn't. They're just called glasses. I was like trying to find the proper name for that. Just glasses with the handle.
Also, he did magic to divinate and scry on opposing nations, so it could be both pairs of glasses. But yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting too. Short segue. He spied on other nations. He had this system of like the 91 parts of the world, and each of them has like an Enochian name, and he would call to that power to to figure out what's going on in any particular area he was thinking of.
It's like the first like secret psychic warfare intelligence op.
Pretty amazing.
So in effect, he was the eyes of the queen. John Dee possessed knowledge of most, if not all, the world sciences and what they had to offer at the time. He was a master cartographer, navigator, mathematician, alchemist, and code maker. While other so-called alchemists were busy distracting the royalty of Europe with false promises of turning lead into gold, only to disappear with the startup money, John Dee was urging the queen to focus her attention on the, quote, New World, as is the conquest of this land, not false promises of unlimited gold, would determine which nation would become the next world power. John Dee, in fact, was the first person to use the phrase British Empire and imagine the yet unconquered Americas as its Edenic center. In many ways, Jack Parsons' involvement in the early American rocketry program, with its resultant landing on the moon, was not dissimilar to John Dee's involvement in getting the British Empire to colonize North America as a dominant seafaring empire. After all, Jack Parsons was working with a magic system that John Dee and his dubious partner, Edward Kelly, had created in the pursuit of expanding the English-speaking empire beyond the known limits of exploration. And if you'd like to hear the rest of this episode, it'll cost you absolutely nothing except to visit to www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where you can get this one extended episode absolutely free, but to get all the rest of the extended episodes, you'll have to pay me at least $5, but I'll send you a really fancy sticker and you'll get access to our Discord server where you can talk to us about the rest of the things we're going to be discussing on this show, which include the Daughter of Fortitude, who MADIMI actually is, some of the alchemical and mythological anatomy of Thelema. We're going to talk a little bit about Nuit, Rahor Quit. We're going to talk about the Sphinx.
We're going to go a bit into the divine feminine, masculine, and child, and the Aeon.
So please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where you can eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Woo!